Forget everything you know about heroes. Forget the capes, the shields, and the speeches about hope. That era is over. The Avengers, the gods among us, they're gone. And what's left in their place? A power vacuum. But you'll get that later. What happens when the world no longer has its guardian angels to call? It settles for the devils it already knows. The leftovers, the broken weapons.
There is no higher calling.
The projects that went sideways, the anti-heroes that history tried to sweep under the rug, the forgotten characters are stepping into the spotlight now. This is the story of the Thunderbolts. And this story begins with the loneliness deep in Yelena Belova's soul. Yelena on a skyscraper rooftop at night. The city lights blur below her. She's on top of a skyscraper. This view doesn't impress her. Nothing does anymore. There's this hollow space inside her, a kind of crisis that just won't quit. At first, she thought it was grief from losing her sister Natasha, the only anchor she ever had in a world of lies. But now, the feeling is different. It's bigger, heavier. It's like by avenging her sister, and on an impulse, a desperate search for any kind of feeling, she just jumps, freefall. The wind screaming in her ears. Just before impact, with surgical precision, she pulls the ripcord. The jolt yanks her back to reality. She lands on another rooftop, right into her job, a nasty brawl with a bunch of goons. This is what she does now. Runs missions for Valentina de Fontaine. She thought the routine, the controlled violence would fill that emptiness. But even that isn't working anymore. She's not happy, she doesn't feel a purpose, but she doesn't need any of that while she's viciously fighting her enemies. The mission might even seem easy. Infiltrate a hidden lab, get a facial scan, and in the middle of all the lab equipment, she finds a small test subject, a scared animal, the only living thing there besides the scientists. Could this actually be a flicker of empathy? She knows her orders seemed clear, but they didn't specify how to get rid of the evidence. That's when a scientist confronts her, and weirdly, he seems to know exactly who she is. He warns her that the lab belongs to a group called OX, and that Valentina sent her to cover their tracks. But he begs her, saying that what OX is doing could put all of humanity at risk. He warns her she's making a terrible mistake, and then he attacks her. Yelena takes him down easily, but before she delivers the final blow, he says something that will kickstart the whole mess. Project Sentry. With the mission accomplished, Yelena leaves the burning building behind, grabbing a coffee like nothing happened. But the scientist's words stick with her. Washington, D.C., a government building. While Yelena is dealing with the grime on the streets, Bucky Barnes is trying to clean up the filth in the halls of power. He's a high-ranking congressman now, a man desperately trying to leave his past behind. His personal crusade has a name, Valentina de Fontaine. He wants her out of her position as CIA director, publicly accusing her of being the mastermind behind OX, of running illegal human experiments to create her own version of a super soldier. Apparently, everyone wants their own Captain America to lead their war machine. Except, we're not talking about some authoritarian government, which would be bad enough. This is a shady corporation whose intentions seem even darker. In court, Valentina defends herself fiercely. She argues that with most of the Avengers out of the picture, someone had to step up. And honestly, she's not entirely wrong. She even says that every move she made, no matter how shady it seemed, was to keep people safe. But as soon as the doors close, she orders her assistant Mel to eliminate any evidence that could tie her to the mess. That's when the bad news hits. One of her labs has been completely destroyed by Yelena. The pieces on Val's chessboard are starting to move on their own. Scene change. A cluttered, slightly run-down house. Feeling lost, Yelena goes to visit her dad, Alexei, the Red Guardian. He greets her with that chaotic energy we all know, talking about his new life, the important people he's met. But he quickly realizes Yelena isn't there for a friendly visit. Yelena admits she's thinking about quitting, about leaving her job with Valentina. That's when Alexei drops the act. The truth is, he's miserable, missing the action, the glory of being a national hero. He doesn't want her to quit. He wants in on her crew.
They're so bad.
In a last-ditch effort to find some meaning, Yelena confronts Valentina directly. She's tired of operating in the shadows. She wants something more public, more significant. Valentina, the master manipulator, sees a golden opportunity. She doesn't give a straight answer, but an offer, a final deal. One last mission for OX. There's a vault. Val says, where OX keeps its most sensitive secrets. Someone is planning to break in. I want you to follow the suspect, find out what he wants, and when he gets it, kill him. Only then will all of this be over. Yelena, as much as she disagrees at first, takes the deal. But the vault wasn't a mission, it was a trap. She gets to the location and finds herself surrounded by classified files and disturbing images, the failures of OX's experiments. That's when the door opens. It's not a thief, it's John Walker, the US agent, in his knockoff Captain America suit. No warning, no talking, he just attacks her. A freight train of brute force. Their fight is cut short by a third figure. Taskmaster, Antonia Dreykov, the daughter of an old enemy, turned into a lethal weapon of imitation. But she's not there for Yelena. Her target is John Walker. The fight turns into an all-out brawl. In the middle of the chaos, a fourth person appears. Ghost, Ava Starr, a digital specter phasing through walls. And finally, the fifth element, the weirdest piece of the puzzle. A young guy in pajamas looking dazed and about to puke, who says his name is Bob, and he has no clue how he got there. The confrontation stops. The truth hangs in the air, almost making a sick kind of sense. All of them at some point worked for Valentina. All of them were her disposable agents. And now they were all together in the same deadly trap. Looks like they're the squad. Well, that would be another movie, but it's the same idea. Ghost tries to phase through the wall to escape, but something stops her. A deep, low hum starts to build, and the vault walls begin to glow a dense red. Valentina, watching it all on her tablet, smiles. She's turned the vault into an incinerator. Her plan: burn all the witnesses at once, and with that, destroy any hard proof of her crimes. Panic, obviously, sets in. They walked in as individuals on a mission, and now they had to team up. A makeshift team, desperately looking for a way out. Ghost manages to phase through the wall and disappears. And for a second, the others think they've been ditched, but she comes back. Seconds before everything goes up in flames, she pulls them out, one by one, using her power to phase through solid matter. The shockwave from the explosion throws them clear. They're injured, nearly dead, but they're alive. And here they are. And among the wreckage, Yelena's eyes meet Bob's percent. In that instant, she's pulled into a memory, one that haunts her. Her first mission, the day she betrayed and killed someone she loved. She wakes up screaming, her face drenched in sweat, a new layer of guilt settling in her soul, heavier than any she's ever felt. But all of that will be unpacked later on. Surviving Valentina's trap was the easy part. The real challenge starts now, because when you're locked in a room with 4 other people you don't trust, the enemy isn't just outside. He's right next to you. The camera focuses on their faces. Yelena, Walker, Ghost, Taskmaster. All battered, all staring each other down. And then all eyes turn to the fifth element. Amid the rubble, all eyes land on the anomaly. The guy in pajamas, Bob. He still looks lost, like he woke up in the middle of someone else's nightmare. Nobody knows who he is or where the hell he came from. When they press him, the only answer he can give is that he was getting his blood drawn, and then boom, he woke up in the middle of the explosion. John Walker's patience, already shot, runs out. He gets in Bob's face, full of rage and frustration. And violence, of course. To him, Bob isn't a victim. He's an uncontrolled variable, a risk. He tells Bob to be straight with him and stop messing around. He suggests, with zero irony, that they just throw him back in the fire and get it over with. But Bob, even disoriented, doesn't seem to care much for this fatal proposal. He looks at Walker's suit, a cheap imitation of the symbol that once stood for hope, and claps back, his voice surprisingly steady. If you're Captain America, then damn, this country is really screwed. The tension is insane. Nobody knows who to trust now. Fists are clenching. The team is about to implode before it even starts. But it's Yelena who steps in. She gets between them, not with aggression, but with a calm authority that surprises everyone, including herself. She calms him down. She stops the team from falling apart right there. In a moment of vulnerability, Bob pulls her aside. With a shaky voice, he confesses something that seems to bother her somehow, maybe because she relates. He says he's tired of running from himself, that his life doesn't make sense anymore. And then he describes the feeling, a deep emptiness, a lack of purpose. The exact same void she carries inside her. For the first time, Yelena doesn't see a stranger, but a mirror. Far away, Valentina gets the report from her assistant, Mel. Her guests escaped. And worse, there's a new element, a face that's not in any file, Bob. Valentina's ironic smile vanishes. The control freak has lost control. Full investigation, she orders, her voice as sharp as glass. I want to know exactly who this guy is and how he got into my game. Strike teams are sent out immediately, fast. What she doesn't know is that one of her most trusted pieces is a double agent. Her personal driver, the man who takes her everywhere, is Alexei, the Red Guardian in disguise. And from that front row seat, he's been learning a lot more than she could ever imagine. Valentina's investigation quickly bears fruit, and the truth is more alarming than she predicted. Bob isn't a nobody. He's Robert Reynolds, one of the original test subjects from the infamous Project Sentry. And the reason he was alive, unlike everyone else who went through the procedure, is simple and terrifying. For him, the experiment worked. The team makes their way through a maintenance tunnel, a tight, steep, and claustrophobic path. It's the first real test of teamwork. They push, they pull, helping each other climb, step by step, toward a faint light at the end of the tunnel. In a tense moment, John Walker slips, almost dragging everyone down into the darkness with him. But they hold on, together, and they all make it out alive. But the light at the end of the tunnel was from spotlights. As soon as they emerge, panting and covered in dirt, they find themselves surrounded. A full military squad, sent by Valentina, is blocking every exit. There's nowhere to run. It's the end of the line. Everything that was bad just got worse. They quickly cook up a last-minute plan, a desperate defense to hold their ground. Watching from a distance, Valentina gives a specific order to her commanders. No lethal force. There's someone in that group I still need. Alive. Her prize, Bob, can't be damaged. Their plan is flawed, but it's the only one they have. They're not the best together, but they're the only only ones who can team up. It's not much, but they only have each other. So Yelena decides to stick with Bob. Ghost phases through the perimeter, positioning herself outside to help with the escape. And John Walker braces for the wave of soldiers heading their way. Walker, without backup, is forced to take on the entire squad alone. When Yelena and Bob reach him, they find him standing barely over a pile of unconscious bodies. But there's no time to breathe. Another wave of soldiers is already on its way. Trapped, Yelena hands a gun to Bob. He's bleeding, shaken, still trying to piece together who he is, but he takes the gun. Together, side by side, they face the next attack. And somehow, against all odds, they manage to repel the second wave. Walker, exhausted, panting, can barely speak. Next wave hits in 60 seconds. We have to go now. With no other choice, they resort to the most desperate tactic. They strip the fallen soldiers and put on their uniforms. It's their only chance to blend in and get out of there alive. With Bob limping, weak from his injuries, they move like a broken unit, leaning on each other. They think Ghost ditched them, but she didn't. She pulls up in a stolen truck, ready for extraction. But when they get to the checkpoint, it all falls apart. The guards know something's wrong. They're cornered. It's in that moment that Bob makes a decision. Looking at the team that somehow protected him, he takes a deep breath. He gets out of the truck, gun in hand, and yells at the soldiers, drawing all the attention. "I'm the one you're looking for." He gives himself up. A final distraction so the others can escape. And in the next instant, he's riddled with bullets. The team speeds away, the sound of gunfire echoing in their ears. But then, something impossible happens. Bob doesn't die. The bullets fall off his body like raindrops. He doesn't just survive, he starts to float. Eyes wide with total shock, he rises slowly off the ground. He's flying. Everyone, soldiers and fugitives, watches from below, stunned. And then, without thinking, Bob shoots into the sky and dives back to Earth like a human missile. The explosion doesn't level the place, but the impact is huge, sending soldiers flying everywhere. Bob hits the ground hard, unconscious. The rest of the team is thrown by the shockwave. The screen cuts to black, leaving the sound of the team's ragged breathing and the echo of Valentina's order. The desert, post-explosion, ash and dust everywhere. In the aftermath of Sentry's fury, what's left isn't a team of heroes, but a collection of survivors. And the first question hanging in the air isn't what happened, but who survived. One of the fugitives, Ghost, turns to Yelena, her voice muffled by the dust. Yelena doesn't even turn around. Her gaze is fixed on the horizon, cold and distant. She answers calmly, with a finality that freezes the already cold desert air. She killed a lot of people. It was her turn. There's no grief, no remorse, just the brutal math of survival. The old Yelena, the weapon of the Red Room, is still there, right under the surface. And in this desolate scene, an unlikely figure emerges. In a suit, chest puffed out like a peacock, Alexei, the Red Guardian, finally arrives. He's late, of course. Too late to stop Valentina from trying to roast his daughter alive, but he came. He sees her, no longer alone, but surrounded by this pack of misfits, and a smile of pure fatherly pride lights up his face. "So," he says, his voice booming in the silence, "you finally found a bunch of reckless anti-heroes to lead." It's John Walker who answers, getting up with difficulty. "Actually, we have a name." Yelena looks at him, one eyebrow raised, and then a ghost of a smile touches her lips for the first time. "Thunderbolts?" Alexei bursts out laughing, a loud, genuine laugh, full of joy. The name came from Yelena's childhood, from a small, scrappy soccer team she had, called the Thunderbolts. But the moment of unity is cut short by the sound of engines. Headlights slice through the darkness. A convoy is approaching fast. It's Valentina's extraction team. Alexei runs to start the getaway car, but the engine sputters and dies. It's over. Yelena moves first, a shadow ambushing the lead truck. Ghost gets ready to fight, but Valentina's soldiers are too many, heavily armed. Not even she could get through all of them. And that's when it happens. Out of nowhere, tearing through the night on a motorcycle, Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, appears. He roars onto the scene like a storm, using an explosive to throw the third truck off the road with perfect aim. The only problem? In the explosion, he also destroys the Red Guardian's broken down car. Again, later, the scene changes. Bucky has the whole team tied up, not aggressively, but securely. He stares them down with his steel eyes. He says he doesn't see them as a threat. To him, they're evidence. Key pieces in the case he's building to take down Valentina and lock her in a high-security cell. The team tries to push back. They explain they don't work for her anymore, that she betrayed them, tried to burn them alive. They tell him about Bob, about Project Sentry, about how he flew and exploded without dying. But Bucky remains unmoved, skeptical, until his phone vibrates. It's Mel, Valentina's assistant. Her voice is tense. She tells him Valentina has Bob, that he survived Project Sentry, but that he's now a serious threat. Only then does Bucky's expression change. The skeptical soldier gives way to the man who understands the danger of an uncontrollable weapon. He steps forward, cuts the ropes, and frees the team. "We need to go," he says, his voice grave. "Now, we're gonna stop Valentina and whatever monster she's trying to build." Scene change. A dimly lit interrogation room. Then, we see a poorly lit room, where the manipulation gets even thicker. Valentina is face to face with Robert Reynolds. He's weak, recovering, but alive. She reminds him that he volunteered for the experiment, that it was his choice. But the first thing Robert asks asks is, "Where's Yelena? Where are the others?" The scene focuses on a cold, sterile interrogation room. Robert Reynolds is sitting fragile. Valentina circles him, not like a director, but like a predator studying its prey. Her voice isn't loud. It's a seductive whisper, designed to seep into the cracks of his soul. She leans in, her warm breath near Robert's ear. "They left you to die, Robert. Remember? In the middle of the fire, they ran. Because that's what they do. They're fugitives, criminals. You're just dead weight to them. An anomaly they can't wait to forget." She stops in front of him, her gaze intense, almost hypnotic. "They see a mistake. I see a masterpiece. My masterpiece. Only I understand you. Only I see the perfect power pulsing inside you. And only I can force the world to kneel before it." She holds out her hand. It's an invitation, an absolution, a coronation. Robert, with tears in his eyes, desperate for acceptance, for a purpose, takes it. And the instant their skin touches, a circuit closes. Robert's power, raw and empathetic, explodes backward. Suddenly, it's not Robert who's vulnerable anymore. Valentina's mind shatters. The vision explodes behind her eyes. She's a child again. The smell of gunpowder in the air. A scream stuck in her throat as she watches her father being murdered in front of her. Valentina stumbles back, shaken, breathless, genuine terror on her face for the first time. Scene: New York City skyline, tearing apart. The New York sky splits open. There are no storm clouds, just a wound in reality. A roar that isn't sound, but pain itself echoes through the city. The sentry, now unleashed, is no longer Robert Reynolds. He's a walking calamity, a newborn and insane god, consumed by the dark force of the void that lives inside him. He's a storm of pure pain and power, and buildings twist like cardboard in his presence, physics itself unraveling around him. Amid the pandemonium, the Thunderbolts, now a unit forged in fire and led by Bucky and Yelena, regroup. There's no time for old grudges or petty fights. All of that turns to dust in the face of the apocalypse. The only mission is to save who they can. They dive into the destruction, evacuating civilians, clearing paths through the rubble, and for a fleeting instant, amid the screams and chaos, they hear applause. The monsters, for a moment, are seen as heroes. She finds Robert on the edge of a skyscraper, standing in absolute silence, watching the destruction that he is. His eyes, once confused, now carry the weight of 1,000 dying galaxies. "Maybe you were right," he whispers, his voice barely audible over the city's roar. "In the end, we're all alone." And with a resigned acceptance, he steps forward, not falling, but dissolving, melting into the void he himself created. The Red Guardian screams, a sound of pure fatherly anguish, but Walker holds him back.
No, 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 no.
Yelena is adrift in an ocean of liquid nightmares. The void isn't a place. It's the absence of everything, filled only with Robert's memories. She's stuck in a loop, reliving her first mission, the scar that never healed, over and over. With superhuman willpower, she breaks the cycle, only to fall into another memory, darker, more painful. She sees Robert's reflection in a mirror and runs toward it, diving even deeper. But it's not him. Not entirely. It's the void wearing his face like a flesh mask. Some days, the hollow voice says, "I feel like I can move the world." On others, nothing makes sense. "Pain doesn't have to be your final sentence," Yelena replies, her voice firm, an anchor in the insanity. "You don't have to let it consume you." The memories twist, the shadows attack. The void doesn't want to kill her. It wants her to suffer forever, a new toy in its box of pain. It's in that moment that reality rips open once more. Led by the Red Guardian, the Thunderbolts invade the dimension. They didn't abandon her. They came to get one of their own. Together, they push deeper into the nightmare, into the darkest corners of Bob's mind, until they reach the beginning of it all. The cold lab, the promise of power, the birth of the void. And there, the entity reveals its true form, a wave of pure annihilation, ready to erase everything. It corners Robert's consciousness, whispering the final lie: "They'll forget you, like everyone else." But this time, Robert doesn't give up. His eyes shine with a light of their own. "I'm stronger than you," he yells, his voice finally his own, "because I'm not alone anymore." He attacks, punching the pain, the rage, the despair. But it's a fight he can't win, because he's feeding the darkness with his own hate. That's when Yelena does the unthinkable. She doesn't fight. She walks through the chaos, the living nightmare, and reaches him. She wraps him in her arms, a firm, unshakable hug. "You are not alone." And then, one by one, the father who loves her, the fallen soldier who respects her, the ghost she saved, the man she leads, they all surround him, forming a living barrier, not of power, but of presence. They anchor him. They share the weight. You don't beat the void with greater power. You beat the void with connection, with humanity. And with that act of collective empathy, the darkness dissipates. The light returns. The city, in the middle of collapsing, stops. The sky clears. The world world breathes. Robert, back to himself, remembers nothing, but he looks around and sees the faces of his new, dysfunctional family. He's not alone anymore. They are, finally, the Thunderbolts. From the middle of the re-emerging crowd, Valentina watches them for a few seconds. Then, she turns and runs. The Thunderbolts chase her, ready to make her pay. But when they catch her, they realize the final trap. She's surrounded by reporters, cameras rolling, live to the whole world. With a venomous smile, she grabs a microphone and announces, "Meet your new Avengers, the heroes who will protect this city from now on." The crowd goes wild. The team is stunned, but Yelena stays calm. She walks up to Valentina, takes the mic from her hand, leans in and whispers just for her to hear, "Now you belong to us." The film has 2 post-credit scenes that set the pace for future adventures and show the importance of this new team going forward. We see a woman in her late 40s, but for Alexei Shostakov, the universe is much, much bigger. The camera focuses on the box, the art is over the top, and there they are, the Thunderbolts, in heroic poses. With the excitement of a kid showing his dad a good report card, he holds the box out to the woman. She says something like, "Oh, neat," and just as naturally, she turns back to the shelf. He saved the world, but in aisle 7, he's just some guy. The screen cuts to a place that's been the stage for countless plots, but today is empty. The top floor of the old Avengers Tower. The space is vast, dark, with the lights of New York City shining through the panoramic windows like distant stars. Dust dances in the few beams of light. And just when you think the game is over, Marvel reminds you that a new board is being set up, and the pieces are much, much bigger. We don't see faces, just silhouettes against the windows or maybe just voices in the dark. It's a new team. The voices are calm, thoughtful. The conversation isn't about saving the universe, but the logistics of doing it. If they'll operate publicly, if the team uniform sends a message of unity. The casual chat about branding and hero gear is suddenly interrupted by a sound that doesn't belong there. An unusual, shrill, electronic alert shatters the calm. All conversation stops. On one of the giant holographic screens that lights up in the center of the room, the image becomes crystal clear. There it is, the unmistakable logo, the number 4, and they're not in another universe and another decade now.